Hi everyone, Daljeet Peterson here from astrolab21.com. In this video we're going to talk about Taurus season 2022. So we're about to start the second phase of this astrological new year that began a month ago with the spring equinox and Aries season. And I think after what was probably a pretty challenging month for a lot of us, that Aries season kicked off the new astrological year with a lot of difficulty, a lot of tension, right? We had that conjunction with Mars and Venus and Saturn and Aquarius squaring the nodes that we talked about in the last video, which was, pretty intense. And something that we've been tracking here, if you've been following the channel, back when we did our 2022 preview for the entire year, one of the things I was looking at was how Mars was going to be making conjunctions with all the outer planets over the first 6 to 8 months of this year, this calendar year. And I had the sense that that was really going to trigger the release of a lot of energy as Mars first conjunct Pluto and then Saturn. And that's what we've witnessed in these last 2 months, right? We had that Mars-Pluto along with Venus during Pisces season, and that was the intense release of that really aggressive warlike energy that Mars-Pluto is often known for. And right on cue, it coincided with the beginning of this Russian invasion of the Ukraine that we're all sort of dealing with, and I think all a little war weary at this point. It's like, are we still, it's kind of impossible to believe we're in some sort of conventional war in 2022, but here we are, right? And no surprise that under the influence of that Mars-Pluto energy, that this conflict did ignite, which isn't to say that Mars-Pluto is always going to cause wars, but certainly that combination of energy and that cycle does tend to trigger some intense release of this sometimes rather violent energy. And it needs to be, if it can't be properly channeled into the right, more productive means, it does tend to be a very destructive release of energy, right? It does tend to emphasize the more shadow qualities, which Pluto is the shadow. So anytime a planet comes into contact with Pluto, especially Mars, right, the potential for volcanic, destructive, eruptive type of energies is really high. And that's just something we have to learn to live with. And how do we channel it? Right now, it's not really playing out very well. But then last month, we had Mars then moving on to its conjunction with Saturn, right? An entirely different energy, intense in its own way, but then it's meeting with that restrictive, limiting, suffering type of modality that Saturn tends to constellate. So a different tone. It was a very sobering, I think, moment for the world. We saw the first evidence of what this war that we thought maybe would be a very quick, a couple weeks. I think that's what Putin and the Russians believe, and I think a lot of our pundits were thinking. But true to the Aquarian revolutionary energy, a lot of the Ukrainians resisted in surprising ways. And so that conflict sort of ground to a halt. Saturn sort of limited that blitzkrieg effort of that Mars-Pluto energy that it started with. But we also saw for the first time the real results of what's taking place there with these sort of quasi or truly genocidal images and actions that have taken place. And of course, we're not out of the woods yet with this. It's an ongoing conflict. But we do get a little bit of relief, I think, from this Mars energy, at least, for most of this month, which I think will come as welcome relief for a lot of us. With Taurus season here, Mars is coming out of its aspect with Saturn and moving into the sign of Pisces, which is usually kind of a nice sort of cooling of the jets of Mars after going through Capricorn and Earth sign and Aquarius and Air sign, where it has it got a lot of fuel by conjuncting Pluto and then Saturn. Now it's going into the waters of Pisces, and it just has to sort of take some of its momentum off, which, as I said, I think is a welcome relief. So we'll take a look at that. We'll look at the chart. I'm just going to bring up just to recap, because I think it's helpful for us to always have a perspective on as we chart these things throughout the year, what we can look forward to, and sort of, when we look back, we can really see the patterns that emerge with these cycles, which is important. So we just talked about that Mars-Pluto. That's what triggered off in Pisces season, the war. And it's just, you just see this constellation between these two planets, right? Brute force, ruthlessness, it was just that blitzkrieg effort. It was just kind of erupted out of nowhere in a lot of ways. People didn't expect Russia to actually invade. And so it came as a surprise to many military and political experts, but it was very aggressive. And then, within a few weeks, Mars then contacted Saturn in Aquarius, and it's just a whole different energy. But one of the things I keep sort of popping out here is this inflaming old problems, right? And it's this whole thing with border conflicts and where does, the NATO alliance versus the East versus the West, really, and it's such a Saturn sort of problem to deal with, borders and control, who controls what resources. And with Mars there, this sort of aggressive warlike energy between bordering countries, conflicts coming up, and coming to great tension, boundary collisions. That's exactly what constellated here. And now we've got, countries like Finland thinking of joining NATO, and, should the Ukraine be allowed into the EU? And, these borders are being heavily contested. So that energy of this Mars-Saturn conjunction is really quite just literally constellated, which to those of us who study these things, it is not very surprising, but it's always interesting to see how accurately these things can play out, the archetypal being sort of manifested in the concrete, if you will. So, now we've got Mars is going to move out of its aspect to Saturn. Here we showed how it was in Aquarius and how that energy constellated during the course of last month with that Aquarian energy. And I think that, to me, I did a chart on both Putin and Zelensky during the last month, which was really insightful to get a look into the personalities of each of these men. And what came up was this rather interesting dynamic between Aquarius and Leo. And I believe Zelensky's got that Aquarian energy. And I think his whole country has sort of taken on this freedom-fighting, rebellious nature of Aquarius, and it's the resistance that was somewhat unexpected, I think, and has been maybe a pleasant surprise, even though it is just devastatingly painful to watch and witness here from afar. But we also got our first glimpse as Jupiter moved into Pisces and began to move into conjunction with Neptune in Pisces, which has been going on for a long time. It's been happening, started in 2012, will go through 2024, 25. So it's not as long, and I've done a whole video on this, where I did a long article on Neptune and Pisces, which is worth a read if you haven't read it. But this is coming into exactitude during this month. So this is one of the things we're going to talk about here with Taurus season. We're going to have a massive stellium in Pisces this month, where we'll have not only Jupiter and Neptune getting together, but Venus and the Moon will be coming into the picture one day this month. So all of the benefics, right? It's like this great benefic stellium going on in Pisces, which hopefully gives us a real wonderful, delicious type of experience, right? It's just this merger and union, right, with the spiritual, with the cosmic, with the great oneness of being, right? This big dream, the biggest dream, but of course could always manifest on the shadow side as like the big delusion, the big lie, right? And this is something we really have been tracking, and we'll talk about as we look at the chart with this entire period of Neptune and Pisces. I feel like in 2012, in a lot of ways, we sort of stepped into this collective dream, and we've been in some ways kind of metaphorically sleepwalking through life as we're trying to sort of gestate this next phase of really, I think, human existence, certainly civilization and culture. We're in this liminal phase, and I think this Neptune Pisces period really is this gestation that will probably shift pretty massively when Neptune moves into Aries come 2024 into 2025. So we've got a couple more years, but I think this month is really going to give us a glimpse and a snapshot of what this whole period has been, and a real time to check in with our dreams and our visions about who do we want to be as individuals, as a culture, as a society, as a species. Like big questions, big opportunities, but you have a big energy to work with. In general, though, this month does have a sense of a release of that tension that we experienced with all that Saturn-Mars energy. We're moving into a much different phase. I feel like, moving into Taurus, right? That earthy, sensual nature that we get with this Venus-ruled sign, with the sun moving in there. We've had Mercury moving through. We're going to meet Uranus in Taurus here this month, so that energy is very interesting. We'll take a look at that, and let's just jump in and bring the chart up here. So I'm starting here with last month. We're starting on the spring equinox, just to look back at what, where we're coming through and how this energy is starting to shift, right? We had that Saturn-Mars conjunction, and we were squaring the nodes. It was really tense. But, if we jump now a month ahead and look at Taurus season beginning here, as it did very late in the day on April 19th here on the East Coast, now things are starting to shift, right? We've got Mars has come out of its exact, that conjunction has released the energy, released the tension. It's now a good 10 degrees away from Saturn, and has moved into Pisces, as we talked about. So definitely just a little bit of a cooling of the jets, and I think we felt that as it played out on the stage, right, where Russia kind of retreated and has moved back into its attack over on the eastern part of the country. Like I said, this is an ongoing conflict, but there was a bit of a release and a cooling off period. And so as Mars moves through Pisces, it's just a different energy, right? Mars, in all the water signs, tends to get a little, it's like running underwater. It slows down. It has to really integrate more of the emotional components of life when it moves through these signs. In Pisces particular, this is going deep into the waters. It almost has to go underground again and renew, be reborn, before it emerges. When it comes back into Aries next month in its own sign, it just hits the ground running. So we're going to get a really interesting check on, and that's why I wanted to review Mars-Pluto, then Mars-Saturn. Now we're going to next get Mars-Neptune in Pisces, and then very quickly after that, Mars will be with Jupiter in the early degrees of Aries. That is going to be an interesting one to watch energetically. But we'll talk about that come Gemini season, when we're talking about that a month from now. So what's going on here in Taurus season? Well, as the sun makes that ingress into the sign of the bull here, concurrently with that, we've been dealing with this Mercury Uranus conjunction, which is for myself, this is an energy that I'm really engaged with as a Gemini sun, Mercury ruled, and someone who has Uranus an exact opposition to my moon. I'm very sensitive to that Uranian energy. So anytime you get these kind of configurations, I find it quite stimulating. But for some folks who don't have Uranus as maybe dialed in your chart, it can be very disruptive and very erratic, and can be sort of overwhelming, right? This is, when Uranus, and I think I have a graph here, Mercury Uranus, whenever they get together in the sky, it's a pretty intensified experience where our minds, our whole mental processes, the communication, the thinking that Mercury represents, right, just gets electrified. It's like plugging into a 220 socket, right? It's just like you get this sort of massive download of information. Because remember, these are the higher and lower octaves. Like Mercury is the lower octave. Uranus is considered a higher octave of Mercury. So it takes that individual mind that Mercury represents, and gets it plugged into the higher mind, which is what Uranus really is. So it can be very exciting. You're going to have your mind just kind of explodes under this configuration. You get sort of, I call it the downloads of the genius, right? It's just these thoughts that come out of nowhere that are very powerful and somewhat transpersonal, right? Because Uranus is one of those outer planets. It brings that transpersonal energy. So highly tuned into your sense of your intuition and your insights and your vision just gets like just super intensified. But as I said, it can be hyper intense. It can be overwhelming. You can get a sense of just getting frayed nerves under this type of configuration. So something to look out for. And considering that it's happening in the sign of Taurus, right, in this very earthy, grounded, Venus-ruled sign. So it could also affect us bodily, right? That energy, just you'll feel the physical presence of the mental process could affect you bodily, right? Just that nervous tension. But really, you may get insights into things related to Taurus ruled things. So one of the things you could look out for is really finding ways to be much more innovative in your resources, your financial well-being, your financial freedom and independence, right? If you've been struggling with ways of being more self-reliant, self-sufficient, Taurus, within your financial or your resources, Taurus, right? This combination can be really stimulating to get some real great ideas or do some research on innovative ways to generate revenue streams, to generate secondary incomes, to, the idea of the side hustle, which is so popular, right? You may get some really genius ideas on how to do that, how to get yourself some more financial freedom and independence. You may get very innovative ideas on some of your own, like, personal health and well-being routines, right? Taurus is all about preserving the body. It's like that health, wellness, beauty. So you may be interested in some new or innovative techniques in terms of taking care of yourself, your personal wellness. Your diet may be something that is worth researching, some innovative new supplements, or changing up your diets, right? Uranus has that radical, revolutionary and sudden changes. You can just suddenly decide, oh, I'm gonna go vegan, or I'm gonna go paleo or keto, or right, I'm gonna try these new vitamins or minerals, or I'm gonna just completely revolutionize my diet. Something that's really worth being open to, and that information may come from unexpected sources for you during this month. So something to be on the lookout for. All right, so that's all in the first days here of the beginning of Taurus season. And then after its encounter with Uranus, Mercury quickly starts to move into a conjunction with the North Node, also hanging out there. It'll be exact, what do we got there, sometime on the 22nd, 23rd of April. So now all of those insights we're getting from that conjunction with Uranus, now they sort of plug into a much bigger picture as Mercury then joins the North Node in Taurus. Now it's like, what is the deeper sort of wisdom that you can really integrate into your future plans for yourself, right? We're always talking about the future and the direction we're headed when we're dealing with the North Node. And it's in opposition to the South Node, right? So I think what happens is that information you're getting with that Uranus conjunction, now it's like it gets a gut check against the past, right? With the South Node, Scorpio, the emotional value of it. How does this new thing check against the accrued information how we've always operated, and a more emotional sensibility to our mind, the emotional intelligence, if you will. Does it make sense? Does this newness feel like something I could embody, Taurus, for the foreseeable future, North Node, right? So an interesting time. Our minds are really stimulated this month, particularly under this influence. So, just be open, be aware. Your antennae are going to be super sensitive during this period. And so, for good or for ill, right? You could get that information overload. So be be discerning in the information you take in, right? Taurus does have that sense of discernment, which is always good to embody, literally, during this time of year. But, be aware, be open, because Uranus does bring in some really interesting ideas and people and situations that can be quite stimulating. And so we want to be on the lookout for that. Now, a few days later, we'll move forward to April 26th. And you can see what's going on here. Here's what I'm talking about, is the great benefic stellium of 2022 is what I'm calling this, because here we have Jupiter and Neptune joined by Venus and the Moon, all in Pisces, these late degrees of Pisces. Now, these are the 4 benefic planets of the solar system. All of these are associated with really sort of beneficial, generous, wealth-producing, relationship-enhancing, spiritually transforming types of energies. So to have all of them in the sky at once, and in general forming this rather harmonious relationship to both the nodal axis and with what we just talked about, Mercury being over there, conjoining the North Node. This is just one of those, as I said, there's a sense of relief here for this month, where last month and the last few months has been really a lot of tension, a lot of squares. We've been dealing with the more difficult planets of Saturn. Now Saturn still, we can see in square with the nodes. So that hasn't gone away. That's a lingering issue that we're still dealing with. But this is sort of a new energy coming in, and a chance to just to release and to let go into that Pisces energy, right? The cosmic oneness, the waters of all creation and renewal. And that's a great theme for Pisces, is a sense of renewal. And to have, not just, Jupiter and Neptune, which is just a major significance. This is like, once in a lifetime configurations, right? Many of us, we won't witness this. We'll get this once in a lifetime. The last time, Jupiter conjoins Neptune once every 12 years. But the last time it did so, it was in the sign of Aquarius, the late degrees of Aquarius. And now we're getting this opportunity. And I've talked about this a lot over the course of this year. We'll probably spend more time on it. I think I'll do a whole video dedicated to this, because I've written about Neptune in Pisces, which is really a fascinating subject. I don't think I've done a video on it, so I may try to put one of those on my agenda for the next couple of weeks. But big energy, folks. Like, and again, we always have to look at this. Like, to me, it's like the big dream. Like, I call this like, this is like making love to God kind of configuration, right? With all of this spiritual energy, with Venus and the Moon there. It's just, you want to just release something my teacher used to say: let go and let God, right? Let go and trust the universe. Trust that you will be cared for. Trust that you will be supported. Trust that you're doing the thing you're here to do. And this is a time to really align with your highest aspirations, your biggest dreams, right? Jupiter, Neptune, Pisces. Dream the big dream. What is it? What is your biggest dream? But is it is it a reality? That Saturn Aquarius is still sort of lingering, right? It's forcing us to take the dream and to put it into concrete manifestation, right? Lest it become just a frivolous fantasy. This same configuration, and all this energy could just as equally manifest as just complete delusion, like, and the big lie. So it's like the big dream versus the big lie. And so this is also an energy where, sort of manipulative types of people who do not have our best interests in mind seek to manipulate our good faith and our optimism in order to have some sort of rather selfish agendas. So there's a lot of misinformation, and I think we all know about that, and it's all becoming quite clear, right? There's also this sense of this tarnishing of the image of the fantasy world. And I had this interesting conversation with a client this week about, how Maybe this Neptune Jupiter is actually showing us we're starting to pierce the veil of some of the illusions that we've created over this last decade. Like I said, we're in this sort of collective sleepwalk in a lot of ways. And as we're going to the end of this period, we're kind of seeing some of that fuzzy pink cloud that we've been sort of happily deluded by, right? And it exemplified, I guess, in the recent sort of Academy Awards. Like you think about the glamour of the Academy Awards and the actors and the whole Hollywood world, right? Neptune is very much about that glamour, and Venus as well. That's really a very glamorous configuration, but it's also sort of, we're seeing through the cracks of it. Like there's a a delusion, and the illusion is becoming, we're getting a little sense of clarity on that. And I've said that in an article I wrote. There's never been such an intermingling between clarity and confusion, all in the same, churning through these same waters of Pisces. So, this is really a great opportunity. And if you're someone who is on a spiritual path, incredible energy to sort of enhance and really get in tune with that, that energy, that practice, whatever that is for you. And of course, knowing where Pisces falls in your own chart is going to be really important. That's going to show you that area of life where this energy is manifesting. I know for myself, it's my 4th house, and I just moved into a new place, and it's all about this dream and this vision for what this place can be for my partner and I. We're just so invested in it, and so it's just so wonderful. It's very Venusian, we're remodeling and painting and doing very artistic things, very Venusian, and it's been a dream of ours for years, and it's finally manifesting. So really, wherever Pisces is in your chart, this energy is really going to manifest if you use it properly, channel it in a way that is productive. You're going to get great results. If it's a part of life or an area of life that you've been ignoring, where you have been maybe self-deceiving and deluding yourself about what's really going on, if this is in your relationship house and you're sort of in denial about what your relationship is, you could get a bursting of the veil, let's just say. So something to be lookout for. But this is I'm hoping this manifests for a lot of us in a way that is really a relief, right? And again, there's less tension. You can just feel like a lot of these aspects are quite harmonious. Lots of trines and sextiles, right? And like I said, we still have that lingering T-square with Saturn. It's not going to let us out of its grips yet. It's still there, but this other energy coming in feels like a breath of fresh air. And I feel like that's really a theme for this month. And a reprise between now and when we're going to get more of that Mars energy coming in by early Gemini season in a month. Things are going to start to shift once again. So enjoy. Taurus season is really all about self-indulgence. And it's the time of the year where we should be rewarded and reward and pamper ourselves a little bit. It's okay. And it's just that energy, of course, here in the Northern Hemisphere where we have the spring is really starting to bloom. It's that time where many of us are out in our yards and our gardens, and we're getting into the soil, into the earth. Taurus, a great time. It's planting season. We're starting to take care of our yards and our lawns and really getting into the earth, so to speak. So hopefully you'll have that opportunity. And we'll see. The next thing actually we'll talk about is the Taurus New Moon. So that's coming up on the 30th. So let me just jam on up there to April 30th. So here we go. New Moon in Taurus. It's going to be happening at about 10 degrees of Taurus. So we'll have Sun, Moon, Uranus all conjunct. So this is a really intensified Taurus New Moon. What would normally be a really embodied, earthy, sensual type of energy gets sort of electrified by being co-present with Uranus this year. And so that's just a different tone and energy, right? And we've been talking about Uranus and Taurus for some time. So this is going to be one of those intense windows that opens up into that energy. And it will set the tone for this entire lunation cycle. So what begins on April 30th with this new moon will keep manifesting through the full moon in Scorpio later in the month. But you really want to be sensitive to this, because I feel like, and we see one of two things is happening. At that same time, Mercury makes its ingress into the sign of Gemini. So, right, it's energized by that recent contact with Uranus. Now, Mercury moving into its own sign, right, was a very gregarious, socially oriented, mentally active, like you're going to be out, you're going to want to talk and converse with other people, a lot more social activity as the weather opens up, spring is blooming, we're outdoors, we're chatty, we're inquisitive, right? A very inquisitive time. That Uranus energy is encouraging us to explore new things, new ideas, new people, new situations. Rather sudden energy can come into your sphere. New and interesting people, right? Dialogues with people conversations you don't normally have. You may be more open to listening to other perspectives, right? That's the benefit of this kind of energy. I think, did I pull up? Yeah, Mercury Uranus, and then Mercury moving into Gemini right thereafter. So great energy. Your mind is just on overdrive with this energy. Right? Just short trips that are purely for the pleasure of just experiencing new places, new things, very socially oriented, seeing people you haven't seen in a while, chatting with your neighbors, just getting out in the world and engaging, communicating, sharing, dialoguing, right? Again, it can be a very, you can get overly stimulated. You can be like a hyper caffeinated type of experience. But in general, Mercury in Gemini is one of the best times of the year. Anyway, moving back to the chart, with this new moon, this sets off an entire cycle. So expect to be rather energized during this time. So, that's kind of, this is a nice, feels like a reprieve kind of month for us. We get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. We get to be out in the world, socializing, seeing friends, seeing family, and just enjoy this time of year, enjoy this period where there's a little bit of pressure taken off. There's the opportunity to really indulge our senses, to stimulate our minds, to really, and to renew, to be reborn in those Pisces waters. Really go in deep, take a breath, breathe, and relax and enjoy your world, your life, your loved ones, your relationships. Bring everything into alignment. Try to harmonize and just get into that more embodied, sensual nature that Taurus always supports, and all this Pisces energy, which is really quite delicious if we can find ways to embrace it in positive, proactive, and regenerative ways. So I wish you all the best of luck during this Taurus season. Hopefully you get to tap some of this energy in big and amazing ways. Love to hear in the comments how these things are playing out for you, if you're really sensing this shift in energy that we're having during this season. As always, if you like these videos, give me the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you're finding this information helpful. Would love to continue to grow the channel here. And until next time, Sat Nam, everyone.